Okay, so this is our last day on Refuge, and there are some things written on the board, but you can look at them during the break. It's not as detailed as previous days. It's going to be some new material, but most of it should be a little bit familiar now that we've been having this conversation for a while. So if you think about the material we've covered so far, we've talked about why a person has a spiritual refuge, what makes a person go for a spiritual refuge, kind of the drives and the motivations. And then we've also talked about, okay, say you don't need a spiritual refuge, what not to take refuge in, right? Talked about stuff like that. We've also discussed if you've decided you're going to be a Buddhist practitioner and a Buddhist person, you've actually committed to that, then what does that kind of entail? And the commitments that it entails are framed in terms of what supports your personal development. Not, here's what a good person does, here's what a bad person does, you're a bad, naughty boy if you don't keep your rules. Not basic, not simplistic like that. That the way we frame precepts and guidelines and things that are like restrictions is that they are the things that support internal development. They are the things that release us from the habits that cause suffering. They are the things that unhook us from the negative behaviors that harm others. So they are promises that you really are making to yourself. But by making them towards something you aspire to, towards something you rely on, it gives it extra power and strength. But the main conversation you're having is really with yourself. You're reminding yourself of what you already believe to make it stronger and more forefront in your mind. So we moved from the basic 5 precepts that a layperson of Buddhism could choose to take if they wanted to, and we went into the more subtle background precepts, things that help your practice. And that's what we talked about last time. So we talked mostly about it's important to keep going to stuff, right? Keep going to stuff, right? You don't think I've been to this teaching before, therefore I'm done. Or I've heard this person lecture before, I get what they're about. That actually if you want to continue development, you have to keep showing up, yeah? Keep showing up to your cushion, keep showing up to class, keep showing up to your bookshelf, but you keep showing up. And you'll notice those times that you forgot, those times that you haven't been showing up, that you start to lose momentum. You start to lose energy for your practice. And you start to forget those beautiful insights that you came to. And I'm guessing that for a lot of us, the big moments, the eureka moments, the ah moments, come when we're together in a community, come when we're in class, as often or more often than when we're reading something. Yeah? As often or more often than when we meditate by ourselves. So, if you're feeling lack of inspiration, it's a normal thing if you haven't been surrounded by people also trying to do the same stuff. So you need to rely on people that have studied more than you and to hang out in communities that are trying to do the same thing as you. And that doesn't mean that you don't have friends that are disinterested in Buddhism. It doesn't mean that you shun anyone. It doesn't mean that you don't go to some random lecture at a university in Tel Aviv about, I don't know, something, right? Greek philosophy or something. You can still do all that. That's fine, right? Like, enjoy. But if you're wanting to continue the energy you've created in this path, there are things that support that. So when we talk about these extra precepts, they are things to kind of keep you centered and moving forward. So part of that is to cultivate a practice that is in accordance with what you've heard, right? And to remember, we can only practice a small amount of what we've understood. And that's not a fault or a problem, that's normal, right? That the amount you can actually practice is much smaller than the amount you understand intellectually. But what you want to be doing is somehow make that intellectual understanding funnel down into real life practice. If it only stays up there in the intelligence, there's a problem. But to think it's not a problem, that you can't do everything you've understood, that's perfectly normal, right? So given that stuff that we were talking about last time, did you have questions that came up through the last couple weeks? Or ideas? Yeah.
I try to review the material, but somehow, unlike other modules, it seems to me a little vague. I mean, too abstract in order to form it into, or pinpoint into a paragraph. Maybe it seems to me all, but I'm not sure whether I know it's not that I master the knowledge as I would want.
Of what refuge is, or what you do with it?
About this module.
Yeah. This module is just about refuge, right? We're just talking about what it is, why you have it. It's not complex, right? This is an easy one,
Okay.
right? This is the easy one. All the rest of them are hard, right? This should be your, phew, I don't have to think too hard. I just have to process, right? So it might be that you're, no. It might be that you're expecting it to be more complicated than it is. This particular topic is pretty easy to understand, yes? It's just difficult to practice, it's difficult to integrate, processing it is a process. But the information, this isn't hard information, this isn't emptiness, right? Emptiness is intellectually quite difficult, actually, if you're going more deeply than the surface level understanding. Refuge isn't, yeah. It's,
Thank you.
what's difficult is to decide whether or not it applies to you, right? Understanding it, easy enough, but deciding, do I need a spiritual path? And what spiritual path will I have? That's a big conversation to have for yourself. So kind of relax into the fact that the material is easy because the processing of it is changing your whole life, So relax into the fact that it's easy to understand. Then you ask yourself, do I have a meaning and a purpose in my life that is somehow structured and could be put into words and gives my life direction and gives my life happiness and fulfillment and seems to bring some benefit to this world? Do I have a way of orienting my worldview? And what is it? And does it need to get more specific? Is there a way to make it more powerful for my personal impact in this world to have more impact, right? More than just getting through the day trying not to hurt anyone, getting through the day trying not to cause any trouble, getting through the day trying to consume and get and consume and get. We could live just like animals, we could, and we might even live like animals that are not causing too much trouble. But if we want to take the full opportunities afforded to us as a human being, the big questions are important. Yeah? The answers maybe are not even as important as the question, but realizing that we have the capability to ask bigger questions than how do I find food? How do I find a partner? How do I find safety? That we actually have a big enough mind to ask bigger questions than that means kind of we should ask bigger questions than that. The answers, that's your choice, right? That's your business. But the question is important, yeah?
While I was reading this stuff, I was wondering, because they were said the advantages of being a human being, so one of them is not being deaf. So personally, because I'm connected to this issue of disabled people, I wanted to ask,
Yeah.
I mean, do deaf people, because if it's written in the scripture, then I think it's a bit humiliating for
No, you read them with a modern filter, right? Remember that 2,000 years ago, being deaf meant it was very difficult to access teachings. Some cultures didn't have a sign language well developed, right? So it's not about them being less, it's about accessibility. Right? So it's not a value judgment, right? So make sure we clear out our modern filters and hear it from the time it was given, that in that time, that was a hard rebirth. To be blind was really difficult. To be deaf was really difficult. To be a woman was really difficult. But it's not a value judgment, it's about what makes study and practice easier. So everyone's potential is identical. Everyone has the same Buddha nature. Everyone has the same capability to develop and transform their mind. When we think, what is the best conditions? The best conditions are if you're healthy and safe, right? But it doesn't mean if you're not healthy and you're not safe, you can't get any work done. It just means it's harder, right? So when we look at the conditions for a perfect human rebirth, don't look at them as a value judgment of the person. Look at them as accessibility. Because otherwise you will get into that, like, hey, that's not fair, or that's discrimination. You know, always trying to remember when was the time this teaching was given, and then you go, that makes sense in that time, that would have been hard. Now we have good sign language, now we have all sorts of resources, no problem, or less of a problem. Yeah, maybe even a benefit from some perspectives, right? Yeah.
And another thing, what do they mean by seeing to the advantage that I'm not a barbarian?
Yeah, a barbarian, yeah. Because they're talking about someone who has no ethics. A barbarian is someone who has no ethics, right? So then what are the advantages?
Barbarian, the term can be
Yeah,
defined
yeah.
in many ways.
Indeed. Yeah, so if you see this word, I'm lucky to not be born a barbarian, it means I'm lucky to have some kind of ethics. Yeah.
Isn't it connected to the Kala Chakra, fable?
That's another conversation, sort of. But yeah, that's another conversation. Really, in this context, barbarians, we're just talking about someone who doesn't have ethics, meaning they have bad ethics, right? Not just sort of, I haven't thought about it, but I'm not causing trouble, but someone who's actually like, let's kill everyone. That's not a good, right? That's a barbarian, right? Let's kill everyone. That's not a great worldview, right? So if you have that worldview, just say to yourself, I'm a barbarian, stop it. Right? So if you notice an inner barbarian rising up within you, confront him. Right?
Not so beneficial. Not so beneficial.
What?
To be a barbarian.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Stop it. Yeah, stop it. So bad ethics. Yeah, bad ethics that harm. So when we say mistaken or negative or bad, always in the background you should hear something that harms. Yeah. Something that harms or doesn't support positive. Yeah. Yeah.
Regarding, sorry, my voice is a bit broken. Regarding our vows, breaking a vow from the root,
Yeah.
you spoke about certain things, about the 5 vows,
Yeah.
and basically we can retake the vows. So basically if you killed someone in purpose, then you can just take the vow again and you're okay?
No, it's not quite that simple, right? Yeah. I mean, there are things that are natural misdeeds that are negative whether you have a vow or not, right? Killing is one of them. So if you have a vow not to kill and you kill, you're both transgressing sort of a natural misdeed and breaking a promise, both, right? So you have to purify both. Yeah? Right, so what you need to do to purify killing, whether you have the promise to kill or not, say just the natural misdeed of having taken a life, you need to honestly think that that was a mistake. Yeah, the main ingredient to purify is to see a fault as a fault. So if you think, oh darn, I got caught, that's not regret, right? Regret is thinking killing was a negative thing to have done. I need to not do that in the future. And so you're applying the 4 opponent powers of purification to the negativity itself. And then you also need to do a purification related to breaking promises. Yeah? So if you have the vow not to kill, you've broken 2 things. If you don't have the vow, it's still a negativity. It's just you haven't then also made a promise break. So you need to do some purification practice and some real honest looking at what negative emotions led me to that behavior. You know, really checking in. How did I decide that was okay? And, what were the conditions? And really go through it. And then you purify, and then you retake the vows. Okay. But, they say a broken vow is a little bit like a broken bone. You can heal a broken bone, but I don't know about you. Most of us have some broken bones. I broke my arm when I was 5. And when it's about to rain, I can still feel it all these years later, right? It was years ago. I was a little kid. But so it works, right? And most of the time I don't notice that it's weaker, but it's never exactly as strong as it once was. So we have to be careful that we don't take the vows too lightly just because they can be purified, just because they can be retaken. Every time you break a promise, it makes it a little easier to break a promise. You know what I mean? So we don't want to get hung up in guilt and shame and how could I and what's wrong with me. We don't want that. But we also don't want to go too far the other way and go, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll retake it. We need some sort of balanced way of approaching it. Yeah.
Yeah, regarding her question, so I don't want to say exactly what advice I have, but like saying I want to get ready to take another vow,
Yeah.
and I don't want to rush into it.
Yeah.
So I want to try it before I'm taking it.
Yeah.
But I want to know if I'm ready or not. So should I advise the teacher, or should I think about it myself, or should I try and see that I'm not breaking it, or all of the above, or
Yeah,
because
right?
it's so confusing,
Yeah,
especially because of our society.
absolutely. I mean, check in, how are you doing with the vows you already have? That's the first step, right? Those suckers that you already have, checking in, yep, we're good. Uh-oh, right, so the ones you already have, you check in and make sure that they are a stable foundation, because refuge vows are the foundation for any other vows that you want. If you want ordination vows, if you want bodhisattva vows, if you want tantra vows, all the other vows rely on having refuge. So check that your foundation is stable, because when the foundation isn't stable, it's easier to break what comes after. A lot of the time we make the mistake because we don't understand refuge. We think it's some other thing, but if we had actual, real, heartfelt refuge, that in and itself prevents a lot of mistakes. Even, never mind no killing, no stealing, etc., just refuge itself, having a core belief system that you connect with, protects your mind from bad behavior. So really go back to, how's my refuge doing? How's my refuge doing? And to not skip over it because it's simple to understand. To really ask, what do I believe? And of the things I really cherish and believe, how can I make them stronger and more a part of my everyday life? To have that long conversation with yourself of, what do I believe? Why? How should that look in my life? What ways am I not living in accordance to my core values? This is so important, isn't it? So if you've had that good conversation with yourself, kind of in a daily way, a regular way, then you can start playing with the vows you want to take. Sometimes people will take the one-day vows, the 8 Mahayana precepts, which is kind of like being a monk for a day or being a nun for a day, right? And you think, for a day, okay, yeah, I can do it. That's right, sunrise to sunset. I can be the baby version, right? Not all the vows, not all 348 vows, right? But 8, right? Just 8. I can see how I go with that. And that's a good experiment, because probably you can keep it together for a day, but how much your mind freaks out about it is interesting information for us. Yeah. So you can experiment with doing one-day vows is a nice one. You can experiment with living as if you have the vow, but the thing is, everything changes when you actually have it. Yeah, I mean, those of you that are married, did it change when you got married? Your relationship pre-marriage and post-marriage, did something shift?
Yes.
Because of the strength of the promise? Right? So you might have even lived together, right? In this modern day and age, you might have even lived together. You might even already have kids, and then 10 years later, hey, let's get married. Still, something changes with the strength of a promise. Promises have power. Commitment has power. And for some people, that's not true.
Marriage doesn't commitment. I know many people that are, that are married and they're not committed, and I know people that are not married and are very committed.
Yeah, it's a mentality. It's a mentality. But when you,
because they take the vow, and they feel like, okay,
yeah,
and then they start,
yeah, playing up. Yeah, right, dodgy, dodgy.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's real, right? If it's a real promise that is also a commitment, something that you've thought about, did on purpose, it shifts how you are. Just like you might not have killed anyone recently, but promising not to kill changes your relationship to that attitude. Yeah, there is power in commitments. So you can pretend like you have the commitment and live that way and it's excellent and ethical, but what it will actually do to you, you will never know until you've said, from now on forever, from now on this whole life, I will never this, this, and this. It's really hard to know what that's going to do to your mind. So what you want to work on is the things that you can know, getting stable with what you're already doing, getting really stable with it. It's like building a house, right? You want those foundations so strong and stable that however many stories, however many additions you add to the house, it will be able to support them. And if you stay with only one story, only one level of your house, it's still on a really solid foundation. There could be an earthquake and it won't fall down. So even if you never keep building it up and up and up, still it's worth having that strong foundation. And refuge is the foundation. And when people leave the Buddhist path, or when people leave their ethical system related to the Buddhist path, it's because they didn't fully understand this topic. Yeah. The existential crisis came because they didn't spend enough time thinking about, what do I believe, what do I rely on? Yeah. So again, it's very personal. It's totally personal, but it's an important inner conversation to keep having. Yeah, and even if you've been Buddhist for 30 years, to keep having that conversation, what does that look like today? Am I enriching it? Yeah, so I don't know if that helps, but of course ask your teacher's advice whenever you can, but really you have to ask yourself. You know yourself best. Yeah. Yeah, sit with it. So yeah, any other questions from what we've covered so far? Yeah.
Killing in purpose?
Yeah.
Why there is a difference between humans and animals?
Because of the potential of a human is more during that lifetime, not their potential primordially. Animals have Buddha nature, humans have Buddha nature, but an animal is unlikely to study. An animal is unlikely to meditate. An animal is unlikely to transform their mind to a higher level than when it started at its birth.
So,
Yeah.
ask something, it would sound terrible, but if someone kills a person, a human, that is not well, that can never study, so that's okay?
No. It depends on your motivation. I do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a more complicated conversation than this okay, that not okay. It's much more complex than that, hey. But if we know at the basis, killing is always negative, right? Killing an ant is negative. Right? Killing anything is negative. It's kind of like the highest form of stealing. You're taking what that creature values the most, and what it does to us is harmful. Of course it harms them, but what it does to us, what does it do to us to give yourself permission to think your life is more important? What does it do to you to think I have permission to harm? It makes you unsafe. Right? It makes you unsafe to be around. It changes something in your energy. It changes something in the country when you've decided that your life is more important than someone else's. Now, you're not saying it's unimportant. You're just saying it's equally important. So it changes something in you when you've given yourself permission to cross that line. And it does something to you when you've decided never again, or from this day forward not. It changes something in you.
How about if you have to take a life to kill someone, human, in order to save others?
Nothing is that simple, right? Because think of history, right? Remember your history classes. When has killing a life to save other lives meant all the violence stopped then? Done. Sorted. Right? Like, doesn't the cycle of violence just keep coming around? Let's use something less confronting. Let's think of Northern Ireland, right? Let's not talk about here. But let's talk about somewhere we're not. Let's think about Northern Ireland and how much permission there is for one group to harm another group because of what happened to them or because they're going to protect their families or their communities. So they give themselves permission to do all sorts of terrible things because of what has happened or what they're scared might happen. And then it just comes back around, and then that side carries the pain of what just happened, and then they need to do it this way. Someone has to decide, even if you're wrong, you can still win.
That's a guarantee.
It's huge, right? It's a huge mental attitude to be able to look at the big picture of the cycle of violence and to say, even if it means my life, even if it means this person's life, I'm not going to take a life, because that does not add to the peace in this world. Protection, okay, right? You can protect, you can defend, but it's active harm that we're against.
But I'm not talking about, like, not the big picture. Say right now in a situation where, like, someone is threatening, I don't know, a child, like someone who's like absolutely innocent.
Yeah, we're going to jump on top of him, right? We're going to jump on top of him, we're going to sit on him, right? We're all going to gang up like a pile of puppies and go squash, but we're not going to shoot him, right?
But in a way, and I'm truly asking, I'm not trying to be provocative, isn't it selfish of me to not save their lives? Say, I can't just sacrifice myself and save them.
You've mixed two things, right? Do you see that you've mixed saving life with killing someone else? That
but
they're not the
like,
same thing?
If I kill, in this situation, if I kill this person, then I'm saving them. No.
No, petrol.
Why not? I hope it's okay. I'm really asking.
You're because the problem is that you're tangling many actions together. They're all separate decisions. So one decision is this innocent person needs protection. Good decision. Keep that one. Excellent. That goes in the keep list, right? Another decision is this person is harmful and that harm needs to stop. Perhaps that's even a good one to keep, all right? So what do we need to do? Let's all dogpile them, right? Jump, right? Let's get the gun away from them. Let's blah, 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 blah. There's a built-in assumption that to prevent their harming, you have to harm. That's not true, right?
In a specific situation where this is the case, can it never be the case that is the way to...
It's never the right idea, right? Even if it winds up that the bad guy wins this round, if you overpower the bad guy, who are all the people that bad guy is related to that now are holding the harm of having lost him and now are going to perpetuate violence?
And if I might ask another question,
Yeah.
which correlates, is I agree with what you say, but I was thinking lately about Germany with the Nazis. And I think that the West, even if it was the terrible consequences, many Germans died in the end, but it stopped something very terrible that could happen to the world.
But there was action that could have been taken earlier that had nothing to do with death, right? Yeah. It started with some crazy Nazis saying, I'm going to take this person away and put them over there. Their neighbors could have said, no, you're not, and blocked them. And some people might have died, but the war might have been prevented, right? So we're so filled with self-cherishing. It has to get to this boiling point of violence before we act. Good people could have said no to harm way earlier in the peace. And it could be that World War II had to get as bloody as it got, but let's make sure that doesn't happen again, right? What are we doing right now with our inner world and with our outer behavior and the politics we support that is creating the cause for this to happen again, right? It's a painful set of thoughts to have, but did we finish the war? Doesn't really feel finished. It just changed shape. So at some point you have to decide that ideals are more important than your personal comfort, happiness, or even life. And of course that does rely on some idea that there's something after life. But even if you think there's nothing after life for me, there is life after me. It's just not my life. What do I want to leave behind? A legacy of more violence, or a legacy of this person decided to do something differently? Because nonviolent resistance does work. It just takes more patience.
So complicated.
Yeah?
It's so complicated.
It is really complicated. And so the way to make it less complicated is to make it personal and say, what am I doing right now to create more aggression in this world? What am I doing right now that am creating more peace in this world? And how can I amplify the peaceful side? And how can I make a plan in my head for if something bad is going to happen to me, what's a way I'm going to protect and defend that's not going to harm the perpetrator, or at least not kill them, right? That, there are, of course, stories from the time of the Buddha where there was a time when killing was, quote, not so bad, right? Because the Buddha had clairvoyance, right? So, right, this story about the ship captain? right? So the story goes that the Buddha in his previous life, he was on a ship, and he could see with his clairvoyance that the ship captain was going to kill 300 people. He could see that it was going to happen. And he also saw that if that captain killed those 300 people, this captain would be in the hell realms for eons, wearing that negative karma, burning it off. He would suffer so long. So he felt compassion for the people that were going to be killed, and he felt compassion for this ship captain with this crazy mentality. And so the Buddha killed the ship captain. Now the Buddha still had negative karma from having killed, but it was much softened by the fact that he had great compassion, and because he decided, for your sake, I'm taking on this negativity because it's going to be so much worse for you than it is for me to have this killing karma. Because now I have the killing karma of killing one, you are going to have the killing karma of killing 300. So if it's an act out of great compassion that has some clairvoyance behind it, all right. But I'm guessing we don't have great compassion or clairvoyance. Therefore, keep your hands to yourself.
Don't try this at home.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
There's no good menu.
Look, it's confronting, and you just have to sit and play with it a little bit, but to ask, am I creating the cause for more violence by my action that seems like protection? Is it really? What am I protecting? Am I protecting my sense of being right? What am I protecting? Am I protecting land that I've decided is mine? Who gave it to me? Even the first people somewhere probably took the land from some animals, right? The idea of my land is a funny concept, right? Whose land is it? Well, the earth is ours because we wound up here, but even the earth itself, right? Is it ours? No, we just wound up here, so we should be nice to it, so it's nice to us. That's nice, right? But to get really fixated, it's interesting. Just think of how you are with your house, right? If you've invited people over, it's nice to have a busy, crowded house. If you've decided, I want to be home alone, people coming over annoy you, right? It's not the people that are giving you the suffering. It's your mental attitude about what it means for them to be in your space and how you've decided your space is and functions. And then if you're even more, groovy hippie, right? Not even your space. It's just space you're in, right? Yeah, you all have friends like that who are like, anyone, anytime, come on over, right? And how easy it is to be in their house. Anyway, right? Right, except for they're usually messy. I don't know why. That goes together. Messy. Anyway, you just sort of, you're playing with it, and to remember that these refuge vows are optional. If you think you can't keep it yet, you keep it as a project of someday. The world would be a better place if we all had these ethics, but I'm not ready yet, so I'll just hold it as an ideal until I am. So today I'll take the no killing vow. Oh, nope, can't do that one. Okay, today I'll take the no stealing vow. Yeah, when the refuge ceremony comes, you can be like, stealing, that I'm good with. All right, no stealing, that's my vow. Yeah, because then you can hold it with conviction and you can hold it with joy. It doesn't feel oppressive, it feels liberating. But yeah, it's a personal conversation, isn't it? It's really personal. Other questions? And it's good questions you bring up, right? So keep bringing it up, but remember that the way to make it less complicated is to make it personal. Say, what am I doing with these vows? What am I doing in relationship to my spiritual refuge? Yeah, what are you thinking about?
Self-conversations.
I think it would be nice, I don't know, of course we don't have time to talk about it in between us together in small groups. Then we can speak more about it. We can speak as friends, not teaching class.
Just keep it friendly. Keep it friendly. So the extra kind of criteria or guidelines, if you've decided you are a Buddhist, it's good to know in the background there's ways that support your practice. One of them is to stop relying on things that aren't that spiritual path. Doesn't mean you can't use them. It means to change reliance, right? Do you see the distinction? So what it says in the text is don't rely on worldly deities, don't rely on worldly philosophers, And basically, you know, you can still, I don't know, go to some Hindu thing, you can still go to some yoga class, you can still go to various philosophers. It's about where your reliance is. Yeah? So there's a power in having a core belief system. Yeah? A lot of modern people cherry pick, right? You know this expression, where they just take the bits from each religion that they like. Yeah, this is very pleasant. Yes. Oh, that's a bit confronting. No. Right? Yeah. And in theory, that could be based on your wisdom. In theory, that could be based on self-awareness of what's good for you and what supports your path. But if you're honest, it's usually about what's comfortable. Yeah, this does not confront my worldview. This does not confront my ego. This doesn't force me to change in any way. This helps me stay the way I am. So I will take these parts that feel cozy. Yeah, so you don't have to choose a spiritual path, but be a little cautious with your cherry picking and check, am I just taking the bits that don't challenge me? You know, just being a little bit careful, right, about your cherry picking. Now, if you've decided you're a Buddhist, you've committed, this is your core, and now anything else you do is to support and augment that, right? So you can still do all your other stuff, but it's a way of having a worldview, right, and it's supporting your core. So you're consciously letting go of reliance on other things. Yeah, does that make sense? Do you have any grumpiness about that? You know, does it make sense? Okay, all right. As long as it makes sense, then you choose. And then the next one is, obviously, if you've decided you're a Buddhist, that means you have to stop intentionally harming and try and stop cultivating malice, right? So this doesn't mean that you stop harming and stop having malice. It means that you stop encouraging it, right? That you stop validating it. Have you ever had someone difficult in your life that you've been thinking about all their bad qualities, and part of you kind of likes to go into it? Kind of likes going into the details. Oh, and they also do that. Yeah, that is awful. Oh, and they do that. They're so stupid. You know, you like almost like criticizing. And then when you're around them, you kind of like the feeling of being superior and blocking them. That's malice, right? So if you've decided you're a Buddhist, cut it out, right? Yeah, to go, okay, I don't like them. Okay, I know their negative qualities, but I've gone over it, right? Enough. Now what I'm trying to work on. Yes, exactly. Now I'm trying to work on opening my heart. Now I'm trying to work on seeing the big picture. Now I'm starting to take responsibility for my own states of mind and stop blaming other people. All right, that's what I'm about now. So let's at least cool off on that habit of encouraging malice.
He's only said in the last teaching I was there, he said that when you are angry about the person, it's maybe 10% is right. It's a wrongdoing. All the 90%. All the 90% you just project more and more, you just lose the good qualities, yes.
Yeah, it's a good way of, a good shortcut, right? To think 90% of what I am saying is reality is my projection. 10% may be true, but 90% I'm just bouncing off of my own echo chamber. It's a good shortcut, right? Just kind of a baseline assumption. You think, really, 90%? Surely not 90%, 50% maybe. No, probably 90. 10% is true. It's a little cringy, yeah, but it's an interesting way to start thinking about the world. But anyway, if you're a Buddhist to decide, I need to stop actively harboring malice and grudges. I need to actively stop trying to hurt people. And the way we normally hurt people is with our words, right? Yes. Sometimes we really like showing people how stupid they are. Yeah, we want to show them. We want to prove it to the group, right? That's not what we want to be about. If you've decided you have a spiritual path, and in particular a Buddhist path, we don't want to be about that anymore, right? So just making a conscious choice, this is not what I'm about. Then the other things are to respect representations. And I know this is especially challenging if you grew up in a really traditional Jewish background and some Christian backgrounds as well, that the iconography, you don't want to what is the expression? Pay tribute to false idols, this one, right? Right, you know, so hear this one with like some objectivity, because otherwise it will make you annoyed, and you'll hear your grandmother in your head going, no. Okay, so like I did with mine, right? Because my one side of my family is very strictly Catholic, and they have this view as well, right? So what we're trying to do, if you've decided you're a Buddhist, is you want to respect representations of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, not because they need your respect. That's not why, right? The reason why is why. Why do you respect these representations if they don't need it?
Because it's desymbolized for you.
Because you need it.
Exactly. Exactly, right? Exactly, all those things. And what happens when you respect something is you become receptive to it. When you respect something, you become open to it. You listen more deeply to it. It's why we stand up when the teacher comes, right? The teacher doesn't need you to stand up, but you're creating a sacred space which makes you more likely to listen, right? It's all to get you into a receptive headspace. So if you see an image of the Buddha, you want to never think of it as art, yeah? So if it's really badly made, don't say, ugh, that's a yucky Buddha, right? If you're a Buddhist, you have to think, the artist was not skillful, the Buddha is perfect, right? Right? So do you see the distinction, right? So the artist, all right, they could use some classes, but the Buddha is perfect. If you get any of these beautiful tankas in your house, of course there's images that you respond to, yeah, and of course there are images that are less well made. That's okay to notice, but you never want to think the image itself is flawed or disrespect it because it's poorly made, because that blocks your receptivity to what it represents. So this is a really good little exercise to do in your head, because we do often fall into the trap of making something sacred into something really worldly. It's really easy to do. Lots of us do it. You'll see at all sorts of New Age shops terrible things like a Buddha made that's a candle, and you like light its head and it slowly melts. Don't do that. Please don't buy those, right? Or if you buy them to rescue them and never light them, right? You'll see a lot of Buddha heads. The reason there are Buddha heads is because back in the day, lots of amazing Buddhist statues were too hard to steal the whole thing, so the thieves just chopped off the head to sell at markets. And then there became this tradition of selling just Buddha heads, which actually supports the thieves that chop off Buddha statue heads, right? So don't buy Buddha heads, right? Buy a complete one, right? See it as something to remind you of your practice, not a knick-knack for your house, right? So if you're a Buddhist, just start upgrading the way you use the images you have. And if you already have images, like say you already have a Buddha head, everyone's thinking of their Buddha head at home now, I can tell them. I'm kidding. But if you have one, you still treat it with a lot of respect, right? Still treat it with respect, still keep it up high, still dust it, but don't buy any new ones, right? And keep it off the floor, all of those things, right? So again, they don't need it. The Buddha is fine, right? And they will still be of benefit to all sentient beings, whether you treat them well or not. They don't care. They're impartial. They're unbiased. It's what it does to you when you make something ordinary. When you make something ordinary, you stop being receptive to it. Yeah? If you make the space ordinary, you stop valuing what happens within it. So just kind of having the reason why in your head. So then you'll see really super Buddhists, prostrating to things, right? Like this, and you think, what is that about? Weird religious people, right? And again, it's because as soon as you do this, in your mind, triggers respect. And then you start being open, and you start being listening, and then you benefit. So it's always remember the reasons why. So then the same goes with texts, Buddhist texts. So it could be one that is badly translated with terrible formatting and a yucky cover. You still, if it's Dharma, keep it up high, keep it clean, treat it with respect, always. Right? Because even one sentence of the Dharma can transform the mind. You've found that out yourself. Have you ever just picked up a book and just randomly opened it and been like, oh, right, good point there, right? Just one sentence can transform the mind. And so we want to respect these things because of what they represent and what they can do. How are you guys feeling with that one? You okay with it? Anybody having qualms?
Makes sense.
Makes sense? Nobody's freaking out? Okay. Now the last one is more confronting, which is what do you do with sangha? Right? This is the hard one. So so when you see, it's hard for me to talk about because I am one, right? So when you see a regular monk or a nun, they could be the most regular, like super regular, right? Like nothing special at all. Even like less developed than anyone else, like could be total nutter, really crazy, but wearing robes. You want to respect them as the sangha because of what they represent, right? Because of what they represent. What do they represent? They represent renunciation from samsara, renunciation of suffering and its causes. If you've been in an Asian country and seen monks and nuns around, it reminds you of your path, right? It reminds you of your path. It reminds you there's a different way of living. It reminds you I could think about my material possessions differently. I could think about my relationships differently. It reminds you of something. That monk or nun might be having a terrible day. They could be full of anger, right? They could be, really not on track. But what they represent is still there, right? So just like badly made art, you don't want to say it's the Buddha is bad. You say the artist needs help, right? Just like a Dharma book that's not beautifully made, still it has the potential to transform. Same with the sangha. So you want to always respect monks and nuns. Of course you want to respect everyone, right? Everyone. But monks and nuns, you're trying to help, it's to help you remember renunciation. So then comes a really good question some of you probably are having is, what if it's a really bad monk or a nun? Or what if it's a pretender, right? Have you had that in Taiwan? Sometimes you get pretenders that are just dressed up like monks or nuns, but they're just regular people begging. Yeah?
How do you know?
Indeed, right? How do you know? You don't know. You don't need to know. The robes themselves are to remind you of renunciation. They are accumulating huge negative karma by pretending to be a monk or a nun. They are accumulating huge negative karma by going around begging while pretending to be something important. You don't have to worry about punishing them. They're going to cop it, right? From your side, you just are adopting this attitude that says, may I remember renunciation. And also these people, in theory, hold the Dharma purely because most lay people don't have the time to hold the entirety of the Buddhist path because of family life, right? Some do, and we are amazed by them. But, the role of monks and nuns is to hold all the Dharma so that you can get it whenever you need it. Yeah, it's our job. So it's tricky, right? Because some monks and nuns are not always polite, not always well-behaved, right? We're just regular people. So if we're doing the wrong thing, of course, tell our superiors. But what you shouldn't do is gossip amongst yourselves because it undermines the ability for you to connect with what they represent, right? So if you see a really dodgy one, tell their superiors, please tell their superiors, right? Tell the senior monks and nuns, tell Lama Zopa Rinpoche, please, we don't want what happened in the Catholic Church to happen to us, please. So it's not about that. It's about making sure that you don't create a toxic environment in the community that means no one ever is able to reap the benefit of their being monks and nuns in their community. You see what I mean by the distinction? So absolutely call them out on bad behavior, but don't get gossipy about it and ruin what they represent. Yeah?
But wouldn't it be better to approach them?
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Their being, and approach them and...
if it was easy.
Yeah, depends on the,
If it was easy, it was wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the monk or the nun. Absolutely. And sometimes they might not know cultural stuff, and just tell them then. It wasn't meant to be rude, it was just confusion about culture. So yes, of course, tell them first. But it is a tricky one, right? Because you have amazing beings in robes, you have ordinary beings in robes. It's a mixed bag, and we really can't tell, right? We can't tell. And as a nun that lives with other nuns, I have to do this too. It's not like I'm exempt because I'm wearing, right, other monks and nuns I have to think about in this way. Right. So if in one part of your mind you go, okay, I see an ordinary aspect. If it's damaging, I should do something about it so it doesn't harm my community. And so that person doesn't continue to harm themselves. But I need to be a little bit like professional about it and not be gossipy and be like, oh my God, did you hear what that nun did? Oh my God. And then you tell all your friends, right? Because it has far more damage than just gossiping generally the way we gossip because of what they represent. So how do you feel about that one? It's okay if you have a bit of an argument. It's a, you know,
it's so
complex.
different than the regular social conventions. So different. Because we are so used to gossip, and even like the vow of lying is so hard to keep.
Yeah.
So like just regular speech or things like that is so difficult for our culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you know that idle speech and gossip is one of the 10 non-virtues generally, right? So that generally we don't want to be gossiping. But if you know, it's a bit too soon to say, I shall never gossip again, right? It's still a little ambitious, right? To say, at least I will start with, I'm not going to gossip about monks and nuns. And then I'm not going to gossip about my Dharma brothers and sisters, because those of you doing classes together and practices together, you're building such strong karmic connections between you. You're just going to keep bumping into each other life after life after life, as well as Dharma thing after Dharma thing after Dharma thing, right? It's really in your best interest to keep a positive relationship amongst yourselves, right? So, so then if you think, okay, I'm doing well with monks and nuns, all right, excellent. Now, my Dharma brothers and sisters, no gossiping there. Oh, that's hard. Okay. All right, good. Then all of society, everyone, right? So if you need to do a gradual working on your gossip, that's a good way to do it. And again, it's not about the person, it's about what they represent and what happens when you make that damage. Is that, you're with me, right? I haven't lost anyone in the logic sense.
Maybe some of us need to do some purification.
All of us, always, right? And so this is if you're a Buddhist, right? If you're a Buddhist, it helps your practice to think in these ways, right? Okay? And so, I don't know, there's general things like just remind yourself of what your practice is and make offerings to help you reinforce the value you put on your spiritual path. Those are other things. So things like these water bowl offerings is a nice practice to do. Do you want me to explain about water bowl offerings, or you'll figure it out yourself? Do you want a quickie? Do you want a quick explanation of what's happening here? Yeah, okay, we'll do a quick one. Yeah, and then you'll have a cup of tea.
So I made a mistake, I have to move the camera.
No, you put it in the right spot.
Okay.
No, don't move it. No. Leave it.
There are different ways, no?
There are many correct ways. There are many correct ways.
In Israel, for each two people, we have 3 different ways.
As long as you know why you're doing your way, right? If you know why and there's some positive intention. Okay, so traditionally there's a set of 7. And the reason was back in ancient India, if someone important was coming to your house, there was a series of nice hospitality things you would do, right? So you would offer them water to drink, and water to wash their hands and feet, right? Then you would offer them a flower garland, like in Hawaii, right? Flower garland, right? And flowers in the house, yeah, yep. And often you'll see this still in Tibet, where they have incense in front of you. Why? Because it smells like a toilet, right? In India, right? Incense in front, that's nice, right? That's nice. Light, beautiful light is beautiful to make the house warm and receptive, right? Perfume maybe offered here or offered here, again, just a beautiful way of being homey. And then, of course, food, right? Y'all are real good about food in this country. Yeah. Food, and then music. So that was the traditional things that you would offer of someone that you really thought was important to have in your house. So that's the framework for what we do when we want to invite the Buddha in our house. The Buddha's already in our house, whether or not we invited him. He's here, right? All the Buddhas, all the time, no worries. But by thinking it's important what's happening here, again, we make our mind receptive. Now those 7 are just representations of practices, which is the real offering. Yeah? What does the Buddha want? He wants you to not suffer anymore. That's what he wants. That's the best offering, is if you free yourself from suffering. Yeah? Or like if you ask any of your teachers, oh, what would you like? What would you like for, I don't know, Hanukkah? What would you like? You know, they will say, I want you to practice. That's the best offering, because you're freeing yourself from suffering, because you're stopping harming others. So each of these represent a practice. Yeah, so the surface level is lovely, the material level is lovely, and that level is very positive karma and great. And you can think just even pure water, because water is so valuable and so important. I'm offering water, but in your mind you expand it to even more water than what is put there. Excellent. But if you want to go a step deeper, you think, okay, the water for washing, I think I'm washing all negativities, all obscurations, all negative states of mind. This is representing purifying. Yep. Then offering water for drinking, you think, may I take on all the realizations of the path, all the compassion, all the bodhicitta, all the love, all the good stuff, may I embody that. Yeah, drinking, taking in, yeah, you see. Then flowers, you think, okay, the flowers, may I always offer the open heart of compassion. The open heart of compassion. Right, it's nice, yeah. Agam Padyam Pupe Dupe. So incense represents ethics. Yeah, so there's a saying in some of the sutras, the sweet scent of morality. And you'll notice that a lot of the high Tibetan lamas really smell nice. Like their just natural smell is quite nice. And they're just like Tibetan guys, right? Tibetan guys normally do not smell nice because they don't wash often, right? There's not a lot of water in Tibet. It's not like built in as their sort of morning thing. But these lamas, they often just have this really beautiful sort of gardenia aroma. Nothing to do with their soap. It's very weird. But anyway, one of the side effect karmic results of having ethics is having a pleasant smell. Okay, so the sweet scent of morality, when you're offering incense, you think actually ethics. Ethics is what they want. Incense is nice, but what they want is for you to practice ethics, right? Light dispelling the darkness of ignorance. Good classic, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, light dispelling the so you're offering wisdom. Light dispelling the darkness of ignorance. Perfume you imagine offering to the heart center of the Buddha, which is where the mind lives, you know, when it's hanging out. And what you're offering there is faith, but not blind faith. You're offering conviction that positive states of mind are worthwhile and negative states of mind are worth removing, right? So it's conviction in that, right? And so you're offering perfume. Then food, the food of samadhi, right? The food of concentration, the food of meditating, right? And then music is for harmonious communities. Yeah? So music, harmony, get it? Right? Yeah. Harmonious communities. So you think, may in all of my actions, may I always facilitate harmony. Yeah. And not divisiveness. Yeah. So there's the surface level, which is lovely and which is good. And then there's the deeper meaning, which is what the Buddhas really want, because that's where you're going to stop hurting yourself and others. So when you're making the water bowl offerings, you say Om Ahum as you fill it up with water, imagining that it becomes oceans of uncontaminated wisdom nectar, filling all of space, beautiful, beautiful, all the things, because generosity creates the cause for resources, and resources helps you practice. But really you think, may I remember all of these core values, all of these core practices. Does that make sense? That's a short explanation. Yes?
Why is 7 cups?
7 to represent those 7 traditionally offered in India to an important guest. Often music is missed out, so it would be 8. Sometimes people have a bell on their altar or a conch, a small shell. So the 7 represent those traditional 7 that you would offer an important guest. Yeah, any questions? No. All right, cup of tea, and come back at 5:15.